Okay, so pack a lunch. Now, oh boy, we had quite a few fights go the distance. You know what I mean? 6 fights went, well, actually, more than 6 fights went the distance. You know what I mean? But we're looking at 6 of them right here, right now. Okay? And I think what we saw on Saturday night, there's a lot to be said, right? There was a lot to be said about activity. And some of the decisions could have gone the other way if fighters were more active. You know, if they shifted gear slightly. I think that was the big one, you know what I mean? That was the big one, really, for certain people. Like Mick Parkin against Marcin Tybura. You know, like, I think if he had thrown more, maybe it would have been a different result. You know, Marcin was just a livelier fighter. He was putting more out there. Now, when Parkin landed, you could see he was hitting heavy shots. But it was just a lack of activity. Now, Parkin, early in his career, essentially, you know. So I think it's not a bad loss. Right? It's his first loss. Not a bad one to have. Didn't take a crazy amount of punishment, wasn't beat up, nothing like that. But once he goes home and looks at the tape, I think he should be able to take a lot from this, right? And he can put in place the things that can help him progress in his career. Right? Herbert against Chris Padilla. Kind of similar, right? Because I thought Herbert was doing a pretty decent job, you know, using his range, although, and I think we see it from so many fighters, right? There's not a whole load that are able to use the range properly. And when I say properly, they're hitting people, but allowing them to get inside way too often. And when you compare them to someone like John Jones, who just keeps you at distance, right? Doesn't allow you to get inside. And if you do get inside, it's on his terms, right? And he's fucking you up. And Herbert, I think he was allowing Padilla in way too often. And again, he needed to pick it up in that 3rd round. And he didn't, you know? And that's what happens, right? That is exactly what happens. You lose a fight. You lose a fight that technically you should have won. And it was a split decision. So you can see there's judges that were like, hold on. I think this could be, you know, for Herbert. It was like 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. Right, so close. But, yeah, more activity, people. More activity. Which other ones? Now, Nathan Fletcher against Caolán Loughran. Another prime example. Right now, I think Caolán came out on fire. Completely owned that 1st round. You know, and it was the relentless take. Now, Fletcher was getting back up, but Caolán just stayed on him. Stayed on him like a clingy girlfriend. You know what I mean? And was just dragging him down. Landing some shots, just all of that. Now, Fletcher had a better second round for sure. Won the second round, you know? But then in that third, it was very weird. It was very weird because after a good second, just didn't really do shit. Just looked kind of lethargic, just didn't really do anything. And Loughran won. Right? He took, it was because in the third round, it kind of looked like his fight on The Ultimate Fighter, just not really putting a lot out there, you know? So those were those fights, right? And again, as I said, if you just did more, could have won that fight. I think sometimes the corner work, not always the best, coming out for the third round, right? Like, I think not that urgency, not telling the fighter, look, we need this. Even if you lied and was like, yo, you need to put the fighter out, right? You've lost 2, you're down 2, you need to finish it. Because at least then, right, they are really pushing, right? And with them really pushing, although it might be 1-1, they think they're down 2. So they're really pushing, which means they're not letting up. They're not letting up, and that's what you need in the third round to keep the pressure on, to be throwing, to be showing you are the dominant fighter. Right? Now, we had, we started with Fernandes against Guram, Kutateladze, and Fernandes just was on point. Really good selection of kicks. Right? Throwing combinations, just looked sharp. Right? Guram, he came out looking all right. He was pushing forward, but man, he is like, his energy bar just went down dramatically. Fernandes just kept on that pressure. Looked very good, gets the win. Right, Christian Leroy Duncan, really good job. Again, like Andrey, Pulyaev, his energy went, right? But in both fights, really, you kind of thought that CLD and Fernandes, if they had done a bit more, maybe they could have finished the fight. Right? Maybe. And I think that's what you need. Right? The lightweight division is, there's killers. Same with the middleweight. Right? So it's not just eking out wins. If you want to move up, if you want to get yourself into contention, you have to do more. And it's not necessarily like you have to be knocking people out, submitting people, finishing fights, right? Because if you put on dominant showings, if you are there looking to close the show, now it might not happen because this is the UFC. This is the top level of competition. So not everyone is going down like they may have done in your amateur career, right? They may have done on the regional scene. So it isn't as easy to get a finish, right? But if it looks like that's what you're aiming to do, if you are so dominant, people are thinking, was that a 10-8? Right? Was that round a 10-8? Right? If you are putting on those performances, you're still making yourself undeniable. Right? And those 2 fights were opportunities for Leroy Duncan and Fernandes to do that, and they did not. Right? They did not. Now, Nathaniel Wood against Morgan Charrière. You know what? I did not get that right at all. And now, I'm going to say something, and it's not trying to take away from Wood, but I was watching this fight thinking, has Charrière got an injury or something? Because he did not look anything like in his previous fights in the UFC. Just looked flat. Looked flat as hell. You'd think he's a pancake rather than a pirate, you know? And Wood, this was probably one of his best performances that we have seen, right? When you consider the level of competition he was up against, right? Now, he's looked really good against lesser comp, but against this level, might have been the best we have seen Wood, right? And when he put Charrière down in the first, like you thought, and Godden said it, right? You thought it might be over, you know? And after that point, Wood's confidence was through the roof, and he showed it, right? He was landing shots. He was mixing things up. Again, like, when I was breaking this fight down, it was just Charrière had more weapons. But in this fight, Woods was the one with the more weapons, right? Charrière just didn't look like he knew what to do. And Wood was just on fire. Just on fire, you know? So, yeah, 6 fights. 6 fights that went the distance, but not all distant fights is the same, right? Not all the same, but people, that's our pack a lunch.